Cool. We're pretty spread out here, but yeah, just quick clarification. DLNews, not DeFi Llama, but editorial for DeFi Llama. So welcome, guys. I hope you're enjoying this warm, dark room. It feels a lot like Berghain, but you were here to talk about something a little bit different than doing drugs and having sex in dark rooms. Next frontiers of smart accounts. And I wrote in a group chat, we were speaking before about sort of pushing the limits of use cases and what sort of becomes possible when account abstraction, smart wallets, whatever you want to call it, become ubiquitous. What types of things have we not yet seen? Antonio, you want to take that one?
Yes. Of course, I can speak for myself. I work on a solution where, for us, one user has an infinite amount of addresses. And that's the answer, basically, to your question. No? So while before, it was possible before. Like MetaMask has always had a button where you can add accounts. But then when you have 100 accounts, how do you manage them? That's the problem. No? So with smart accounts, instead, it is possible to manage, have a user owning thousands of smart accounts while showing them one interface with one unified balance. And that's one thing that was not possible before.
Mm-mm. Dennis, you have anything to add to that? Some use cases? Yeah, go ahead.
For me, it's like the most important thing I would say is onboarding, because if we really want to bring the next billion people to Web3, we must increase UX, and account abstraction is here to exactly do this. We build something on top to also abstract the public keys and onboard everyone with multi-chain account abstraction wallets and on-chain usernames at the same time. And then they can dive into this ecosystem of all these modules, enabling all those nice use cases. And underneath, everything is basically abstracted away, and they're onboarded through apps and use cases.
Gotcha. And just to kind of double down on this concrete idea of a use case, I saw on Twitter the other day, someone was sort of describing on-chain gaming and how it would work today if you had a MetaMask. Basically, this person is running around in some kind of shooter RPG, and with every bullet shot, there's a drop down of MetaMasks, like sign transaction. Hey man, sign transaction and approve. This seems like a perfect example of why account abstraction is so important. Do you have any other examples that are so kind of clear and concrete, Kurt?
Yeah, so I mean, at Rhinestone, we're focused on modular account abstraction. And essentially, the premise is that any developer should be able to build a smart account feature. And so smart accounts open up this paradigm of programmable validation against the account. So what can be authorized against the account, or how does the user authorize permissions to other third parties to do things on their behalf, but also programmable execution. So what execution flows can be automated against the account. And so, these open up a completely new paradigm. One example that we often think about is account automation. And so as a user, you see these one-click experiences that smart accounts deliver, and often these are delivered through session keys. So the example you mentioned with gaming, if you can grant a ephemeral key which has scoped rights to essentially execute the transaction when the bullet is fired on your behalf, then that stuff goes away. But it can get far more complex. So one idea is portfolio management. Say you have a DeFi position on, and you want to increase your leverage under certain conditions. You want to have stop loss conditions, etc. But these automations can be applied in many different use cases. So yeah, that's one area that we think is interesting.
And yeah, you bring sort of an interesting dynamic to the conversation because you're on the the crypto 2.0. You're working in the AI space a little bit, and can you kind of bridge the gap for why AI agents, which you guys work on at Olas, is sort of so critical or relevant to account abstraction?
Sure. Yeah. So just quickly, at Olas, we want to ultimately give everyone an autonomous agent, an autonomous AI agent that does useful things on their behalf. And so in a way, it's like this level up, right? You have automation, and then you have autonomy. You have your car, which has various supportive and assistant technologies, and then you have your autonomous cars. Same thing with the agents. So concretely, every agent built on the Olas stack under the hood has a smart account currently, when it's EVM chains, it's the safe. And what this enables is kind of complementary to what already was mentioned. The agents, so for instance, one big use case we have is prediction markets. So the agents trade fully autonomously. They have off-chain, like their EOA, and then on-chain they have their smart account. And so one big benefit is that you have the separation of assets and the signer, but then also you can complement that smart account with all these kind of plugins and modules and so on to restrict, let's say, the autonomous agent. So there's quite a lot of things we can dive into. But just to give you a sense of how many users are already agents, so on Gnosis chain, currently around 78% of transactions per month that go through the safes come from our agents, actually. And the lifetime total is 18% now. So this is not like, just like something small. It's like super active. Once you have such an autonomous AI agent, it can do hundreds of transactions a day.
Okay, so in a sum, to kind of put together a little bit what you and Kurt described, is a smart account abstraction is a lot of like inputting if-then statements essentially into various on-chain actions. I feel like that's would it be fair to characterize a little bit that?
Yeah, I think if you have seen the split earlier Vitalik made between like the security part and the convenience part, you probably could add something like programmability to it, and then like it would cover like most of the cases we just discussed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, fair enough. And I think if we think about a little bit what Kurt was talking about, the complexity that sort of unfolds when you start to examine account abstraction, and a little bit of why you guys maybe started your projects, it's sort of like reimagining the term wallet. Like at what point does account abstraction no longer fit wallet as a term? And at what point are we sort of in this newer, I guess, next frontier of sort of holding assets, doing things on chain? When does a wallet, and Antonio, I'll point this to you, when does a wallet no longer fit to what you guys are building?
So I think an answer with a parallel that I always do. And if you think in the 80s, when the internet came out, usually if I wanted to communicate with you, I was calling you and asking for your IP address, okay? And that's basically what we are doing now. If I want to send money to you, I ask for your address. That's the parallel is that. Now, if I come to you and I ask your IP address, you laugh at me. You even have no idea.
Never,
I ask your email address. I ask your Telegram handle. And that's, I think, the parallel that we're trying to unlock smart accounts, programmability, and the concept of wallet is changing for, in our specific use case, we allow a user to have an infinite amount of addresses connecting to an ENS resolver to gain privacy. Okay, so it's another way of gaining privacy in this way. So every time you receive a transaction that goes into a new wallet, and you will see the total amount in one UI, and when you want to do a transaction out, we compute the most privacy-preserving path, and we can coordinate the transaction through all these addresses thanks to smart accounts. Is this a wallet? Yes. It's way different than what we thought was a wallet since, I would say personally, last year. Okay, we started this at ETC in Paris as a hackathon project last summer, so evolved a lot over this year. Also in the tech around how fast the EIPs are going out or the standards. That's on one side you can see them as some fancy stuff. On the other side, instead having standards as what makes what help us define what's a wallet and what's instead an account.
Yeah, very well put. Did you want to add anything to that? Anybody? No.
I can add a take.
Sure, yeah, if you want to take it.
So, yeah, one thing we talk about at Rhinestone a lot is this idea of invisible wallets, where essentially with smart account modules, you have this ability to provide scoped access to different applications. And so this idea of having one identity, one account that you can navigate across many different applications and give scoped access to those applications. The idea of a wallet, maybe it exists as a control center where you have like very specific security controls. But if you want to use some DeFi application, you go to the DeFi application and you essentially sign over certain access permissions and plug in your account, and you use that DeFi application as if it was your wallet, but for those specific use cases. And the same for maybe there's like an NFT gallery app for managing NFTs, etc. And the idea of wallets could essentially disappear or become less important. You could go the complete other direction and you start to integrate more and more features into the wallet, and the wallet becomes a super app where modules are paired with UI components, almost like frames within the wallet, and then developers can bring their own opinionated experiences, and users browse those modules, those applications, like they browse applications today for their iPhone. So I think there's many different paths that it could take, and both are pretty exciting.
Yeah, and I'll also quickly add something. I think we covered a lot what I would call the interactive part. So I need to back out there a bit. I think if you look at like sort of user experience, where it ultimately comes down to, right, we want to create value for users, then what we are conditioned on right now are these wallets where we are sort of accessing the world of DeFi or the world of NFTs, and it's a very like traditional kind of application context, right? Like it's the kind of social application we're used to, and they have their role. At Olas, we're kind of thinking beyond that and saying, okay, well, what's the next frontier in the user application sense? And we think that there should be way more abstraction and like basically removing this interactive element for the user having to be there for every single step along the way. I mean, you were mentioning the game. There it's totally infeasible when you think about the actions, but it goes also around, like we were talking about, using, for instance, like a vault or something. There might be several actions to actually deposit your funds, and there's obviously automation for this, but you can take this further. You can create what we call outcomes products. So it's even beyond intents. Like you don't even just say, I want to specifically like deposit that asset into this thing, because that implies I need to know this thing to even specify that intent. You're like literally saying, okay, why don't I have an autonomous AI agent that manages my wallet? Like how I would have like an advisor and the entire bank behind it do it, right? And so there you have like a fully autonomous product which generates outcomes for you. And I think they're very complementary, because like some of us, and depending on the context, want these like, tight control over exactly what we're doing with what protocol. But at other points in time, we might want to outsource that to an agent which we own. And sort of Olas enables that. And with the safe under the hood, all these protocols are then very complementary, because the user can come in at any point and sort of, let's say, park the agent and say, I'll take over here.
Yeah, interesting. It's good that you brought Safe, where we're at today, SafeCon, into the mix as well. Would you, I guess I'll ask you, Dennis, would you define Safe as a wallet? Would you call it a wallet, or would you call it something else? Maybe this is the litmus test for.
I mean, wallet is part of what they are doing, and obviously the core product of Safe is managing your assets, and in that sense I would probably call it the wallet, because that's the term we are all used to. But like when being compatible to these kind of standards we are talking about, it becomes so much more. And actually when it's programmable, like everyone can come into an open system, like plug in some kind of modules. Of course, like we also have to take security into consideration, like the previous panel did. Then this like opens up a playing field for everyone building on top and enabling all these use cases. And then we can actually start thinking like app-driven or like use case first, and enable all of the stuff, abstracting all the complexity away for the user while still running a lot of stuff on the blockchain.
No, fair enough. And something interesting that Antonio kind of touched on that I thought was also interesting is, for instance, MetaMask, the sort of elephant in the room that we're all sort of trying to improve upon or battle against, however you want to think about that. They measure basically, we have 30 million wallet users, right? This is their metric. They're like, we're big. We've got a lot of people using our application. How does a product like yours that has many addresses that maybe could easily surpass 30 million wallets, how do you guys measure success and how do you find or define milestones and stuff like that for your team?
Yeah, that's a very good question that we also often discuss internally now around that. For sure, I think the measure number one should be how often a user comes back using your wallet, regardless of the amount they transfer, because you can have like maybe 3 transfer millions, but then you are working on a niche, not you are working for everyone. Okay, it's more how often they come back and how many things they can do with your application. This is why, for example, we are now working to allow the connection with Fluidkey with any dApp present out there. No? So we can give this freedom of working on top of that. On the other side, we think that at the moment, what we are building importantly is a protocol, okay, that can be plugged in solution like MetaMask, where see those wallets like you see a browser. In browser, you have a regular navigation, and then you have a privacy mode. That's what, for example, we see inside a wallet, where you have your like public, because maybe you want your NFT to be in a wallet that everyone can see, because it's something that you want to prove that you are part of a DAO, for example. But then there are some other stuff, majority maybe, that you don't want to reveal to anyone, and you go into your privacy mode inside the wallet, and that's how you get. And I think I can add on top of that, since Vitalik talked about that here before, about this EAP we are talking about that gives smart accountabilities to EOAs. I think that if you speak to other people, the majority of the reason why they don't want to move from MetaMask to another wallet is for the effort that requires to transfer all the assets, transfer everything you have, etc. With this stuff, allowing EAP to be smart accounts, that friction can be reduced by 90%, allowing the user to do one transaction that can move all the assets under the hood, and that I think would be like a way to simplify the passage.
Yeah, no, very, very well put, and it sort of kind of puts to bed a little bit this idea of having 30 million users when you're no longer thinking about a wallet-to-wallet basis, you're just sort of interacting in the world itself. I think another question I was curious about too, just from a sort of, I guess, business perspective, you're not necessarily looking to overtake MetaMask because, I mean, it'll be quite challenging, I think. It's probably one of the easier ways to get into crypto these days besides an exchange, but they have this snaps component where they could basically, and maybe I've got this wrong, but they could take what you're working on, or you could work with them to basically integrate because they have a lot of users already. Well, what's stopping them from doing that, or being acquired by a MetaMask or a larger player from kind of taking a lot of your work already?
So what I see as a value proposition we add into the space is that protocol level that I was meaning of, because the hard part here even seems like maybe it's coordinating the stuff as all the infra behind to track, give a view to the user, make sure that we are showing the correct total to the end user, and all of like this small. This problem seems small, but they are not so small. And if we are working at a protocol level, so in a way that if a wallet wants to integrate that, it can plug in the protocol, doesn't have to rethink the wheel, okay? Because plugging in the protocol is way more convenient than rethink the wheel, okay? You mentioned snaps, and I think that it's a super smart way for example, MetaMask to integrate what we are doing. Basically, I mentioned before the private mode in your wallet. Well, the private mode can be initially a snap integrated inside MetaMask, where you have everything at your finger.
Fair enough. And I guess I was curious too, Dennis, you mentioned a little bit about security as well, and I'll come back to you, but I was very curious about how you keep your autonomous agents from running amok with your money.
That's a great question. Okay, so there's a couple of ways to answer this. So firstly, the Olas stack, I'll get a bit into the technical details and then we kind of back out from there, actually allows two kind of deployment modes of agents, which are, again, thanks to the feature of multisig actually in the safe. So one is where basically you have, we call it sovereign off-chain agent represented by a one-of-one on-chain smart account. And the other mode is where you have basically n number of off-chain agents representing being signers on a multisig with n signers and a threshold of k, let's say. So for simplicity, let's say 4 agents and the threshold is 3. And then depending on this, the security assumptions of the agent itself are already very different, right? So the second decentralized type of agent, as we call it, has a very complex deployment mode because these agents need to coordinate off-chain. They very much under the hood look like a sort of continuously pruned blockchain because they constantly synchronize state amongst themselves and then kind of jointly sign transactions like a bunch of humans would. And so you know that basically as long as they're like the threshold of them is like, not malicious, then you have similar security assumption as in Cosmos land with your sovereign chain. Like it's actually Tendermint under the hood. When you have a centralized agent, then basically, right, that threshold is 1. And so it kind of, in both cases, ultimately comes down to the code. And so now there's 2 ways you can think about it. Either you introduce like off-chain restrictions, right, and they only go so far. And then you can bring in like transaction guards and things like that. And we're actually utilizing this, so you can constrain like what the the off-chain system can actually do on-chain by like specifying like specific selectors or whatnot. And
yeah, fair enough. Kurt, how do you guys? What's your approach on security for at Rhinestone?
Yeah. So, well, when it comes to security, there's one thing specifically that we're focused on, which is essentially creating a trust delegation mechanism for developers that are in the ecosystem but looking to use modules that are built by other developers. So if you imagine a world where there are many developers deploying modules that extend the feature set of the account, then when you're installing that module, or if you're a developer using that module, you don't want to inspect the code every time you use that module. You don't want to inspect the audit report. And even those things alone are not enough to give you security and assurances. And so the real unlock is how do you create a really seamless mechanism such that when you use or install a module, you have those security guarantees built in. And so what we've been working on is what we call the module registry. It's a place where module developers deploy their module, and then security entities make on-chain assertions about the security properties of those modules. We call them attestations. And this registry is incredibly flexible. Anyone can be an attester. But the important thing is that it's permissionless and ownerless at the foundations, but then certain entities can come in, define a certain schema. The data schema is just like what are the security properties that are being attested to, and a resolver contract which enforces rules against that schema. And so essentially you can create sub-registries within the registry, and then teams or users or even account vendors can run policies where they pick, well, what attesters, what resolvers do I want to trust and work with. Yeah, so that's how we think about security in terms of building an open and permissionless ecosystem of modules.
Yeah, fair enough. Dennis?
Yeah, actually, I would like to extend this a little bit. At first, I'm a big fan of the security registry they are pulling up. But we are looking on it from with our product from a user security perspective, especially when it comes to public keys or wallet addresses, which are like a big attack vector in our opinion. And they are also a blocker in terms of convenience, like who has not copied back and forth some public keys, compared every single character on their ledger, and so on. And also they are victims to address poisoning attacks and all that stuff. So this has been solved by ENS on L1, and they've done a great job. And the protocol itself is perfect, and we are building on top of ENS, but it's not yet fully ready to like also solve this issue on L2 for smart accounts, especially when it comes to multi-chain smart accounts, because smart accounts or account abstraction solves so many things, especially also when onboarding new people on the abstraction of the private key. Like you can just like use a passkey, you can log in with Twitter and all that stuff, but still in the end the user is exposed to like a public key and even multiple ones if you like look at the account abstraction landscape from a multi-chain standpoint. So what we are doing is like extending ENS to become more interoperable with these smart accounts and bringing it to L2 and even making it more gas efficient to like really onboard everyone with abstracting away the public key and the private key in the one step. That's like just a different perspective on the security part I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, no, great. I think it's interesting that you bring up ENS because in a lot of ways we can batch them quite easily into account abstraction, and yet ENS maybe isn't quite a wallet in the sort of traditional sense that we think of a crypto wallet. It is in many ways more like a Google login. And I guess I would ask you guys, do you think a Google sign-in is like the direction that account abstraction is headed as one manifestation?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to have one account and it's infinitely portable across many applications, there needs to be like an SSO-style login, but it's incredibly challenging. So there isn't...
Why?
Yeah,
what makes it challenging?
Yeah, so there's an ERC out that proposes a solution to this. It's called ERC 7555. And some of the challenging aspects is, well, in terms of the user flow, if I arrive at a application that is utilizing the standard to like surface a UI component where I can say, yes, I've already onboarded into the system and this is the account or the account vendor that I onboarded through. Often as a user, you don't know, okay, I discovered this application and they created an account and they use safe under the hood. So I don't know to say, okay, I have a safe account. Or maybe it's privy, maybe it's Biconomy, maybe it's zero dev. A lot of that is abstracted away from the user. So then do you introduce a unique identifier? But then how do you map the unique identifier to the account? Is this stored on a centralized registry? Is it not stored on, is it stored on some kind of more decentralized kind of open registry, in which case then privacy is a problem? Mm-hmm. What should be the chosen identifier? Should it be an email? That's not very crypto friendly. Mm-hmm. Should it be ENS? That's kind of weird for the normies that want to enter the space. So it's a really challenging thing to solve, but it's definitely one that's worthwhile digging into.
Yeah, it sounds like in a lot of ways, and we started this conversation with use cases and looking forward, but it sounds like also too that there's still a lot of question marks around how this should be built and what's the end goal essentially. That makes me think that there's still maybe a lot of interest in luring in more developers to be building this, to be focusing in this sort of problem space. How would you guys say, and maybe I'll pose this also to Antonio, how would you say to a developer maybe in Web 2 or maybe working on something else not related to account abstraction, how would you say that this is a really important problem? If we can solve this, we can unlock a lot of value.
Good question. Maybe with a parallel with how Web 2 works. So like actions that now we give for granted, like that you can automate with the easy code. If one of those actions needs to be done manually, more manually, I mean, I don't want to do parallels with ages ago in the computer science part, but that might be something where you can say, oh, in the past it was done so complex, now you push a button and that's done. No, I think about the evolution of the internet and communication infrastructure, okay? Without was much more a big problem around that. So that might be a parallel. The other, but I think that the difference that needs to be understood is that while Web 2, of course there are standards, but each company were building their own standards and others were following the lead. The big difference that needs to be understood for new Web 2 developers is that standards here often comes before a product is made, and that's like a killer feature, a killer also approach in how we want to build this space, because it makes compatible application. Mm-hmm. You don't lock the user. So also connecting to the question before around what should be the flow of the user, what I like of the space is that it can fit from a Google single sign-on that, thanks to, for example, Privy, translates into a key under the hood, but the user doesn't know, to myself that maybe I'm super scared about privacy and I have my own hardware wallet, but in the end we can connect to the same application, do the same stuff. Okay.
No, fair enough. I guess I'd ask you, Dennis, as well. I know you're a rather small team, but I imagine you're looking to probably grow eventually and become a larger outfit. How would you sort of attract developers to come join your mission in account abstraction?
Actually, I would see this a lot more positive. Like, I think we are already got pretty far. Of course, like we need to like settle a couple of standards discussions, solve network abstractions, and a couple of the stuff. But like a lot of the stuff we are talking about is usable right now. And for example, the meme video you referenced at the very beginning, like this is solved. This is working right now. And the stage account abstraction is in, to my opinion, actually will attract a lot more Web2 business that didn't thought about integrating anything with crypto into their apps before now, because now it's actually possible without letting their users know while still benefiting from all of this stuff.
Yeah, fair enough. And to kind of go back also maybe just 2 steps, but yeah, I thought that was a fascinating answer. But this idea of account abstraction in a multi-chain world, I understand that you guys are building with Tendermint underneath the hood. How are you coming at this different perhaps from like a traditional Ethereum developer or somebody building on Ethereum?
Growing developers.
Yeah.
Well, it's in our case. Ultimately, what we're creating is a synthetic user, which you, the end user, can ultimately beneficially own. And like, we're at the very beginning of this journey. I mean, I mentioned our metrics. I think there will be millions soon, and then billions of these kind of autonomous AI agents. Obviously, not all from us. And what this means is that we kind of coordinate. Like the role of Olas is really to coordinate different roles, like those of the builders who are building these agents, those who are running the agents. Like those would be currently our users, but to understand that we are not currently focused on these kind of interactive experiences, which I mentioned before. So we're not giving you an agent which has a ChatGPT-like user interface, and then you compose a transaction and send it. This, for us, feels like a interesting but ultimately limited opportunity. We're going beyond that, where it's fully autonomous agents. And so this means that basically, we're focused on growing those people who are building these agents. And if you want to build fully autonomous AI agents, it's even more complex than building AI models. What we all know, like ChatGPT and the likes, these are not agents, right? They are models. And as we're progressing through time, these models are becoming like more agentic, or let's say the contraptions built around them currently are becoming more agentic, and people are trying to make the models themselves more agentic. But they still basically need to be called. And so we're building these agents around them and kind of helping builders to compose new agent use cases in very different domains. So we have some, as I mentioned, the biggest use case in prediction markets. There's one around social, so our DAO uses this, where basically this agent system, in this case the decentralized version with Tendermint under the hood, runs off-chain by multiple agents, and it continuously monitors basically X at the moment, and soon Fahrkasse, where basically it reads the content of DAO members, and it actually like uses models to read it, interpret it, see whether it matches the DAO's intent, like what the DAO is about. It scores people, and then they end up on a leaderboard. So that's one example. Another one where this decentralized deployment comes in is in governance. It's a live use case, but hugely underdeveloped. Come talk to me if you want to work on this. Basically, you can delegate it your tokens, and then it works like if I were to delegate you my tokens, it will go and vote in proposals.
Please delegate to me, man. That would be great. Yeah.
All right. Long story short, like we enable, like as Olas, the protocol and stack, we enable like people to build these use cases, and it's a great time to join, but it's also like super early still, and like every time you're then deploying an agent build on Olas, all this smart account is sort of abstracted and already built into the stack, etc. So you don't have to worry about it.
Did you want anything to that, Kurt? No, okay. I did have a kind of interesting question because in this space, it also seems like we've talked about standards, we're talking about like solving certain problems. Building a company is a massive task, but to kind of try and build something while standards are still being put in place seems like an additional hardship. If you could, as a founder, you guys are all founders here, if you could have one standard or perhaps one key problem sort of solved and settled, that would be the most beneficial to you, that would help you kind of get to whatever next stage, next frontier. If you guys can still, I think you managed to use next frontier in a response. I think you three still need to get that in there. If you could, we got plenty of time to do it, so I think there'll be plenty of opportunities. But let's talk about sort of, if you could solve one problem in the account abstraction space, what would it be, and why would it be so beneficial for each of your projects? Kurt, it sounds like you have something you might want to say.
I don't.
No.
I mean, I mentioned one earlier that I think is really important, 7555, and essentially allowing users to have more portable accounts without having to necessarily know and really get into the intricate details of managing those accounts. So yeah, I think that's pretty important.
Okay.
Personally, would be Keystore rollout. I mean, there are Team Safe is working on that, and I think that being able to have one key in one place, being used across any amount of smart account, that's a problem that will unlock even more simplicity and use case for the end user.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I was about to say the same. And it's like great to see all the progress that's being made by the Safe team, by the Scroll team, and also by the Base team. And like a lot of stuff got presented today, a lot of exciting stuff. So yeah, looking forward to see it solved.
Yeah, just a few hours ago, Scroll made that announcement about the key store. But yeah, please add your.
Yeah, underwrite that as well. I mean, again, like from my previous answer, you can see we kind of take the product as is, and it's a fantastic product, and there's other similar fantastic products. But if we had more support for like seamless cross-chain support of these wallets, that'd be fantastic, because our protocol is already on 8chain, so would help.
Maybe I'll just add one shameless plug. But I do think the next frontier of smart accounts is permissionless innovation with smart accounts. And so one important standard there is ERC 7579, which is a minimal standard for modular smart accounts. We had an interesting announcement today with the Safe 7579 adapter and bringing the Safe to this ecosystem. So we're super excited about what's happening there.
Cool, very good. We still have about two more minutes, it looks like. But I guess I'd be curious too. Finally, it's kind of maybe the wrong question to ask with 2 minutes left, but we'll maybe speed run this one. We've kind of touched a little bit on the idea of multi-chain and working. Account abstraction in a lot of ways also seems to be solving this idea of like you're just interacting in the world. You're not thinking about which chain you're on. But it also seems like we're still quite far away from that sort of thing. What kinds of I guess progress still needs to be made for that experience to be felt by a user? Dennis or Kurt or Antonio, anyone want to?
I mean, there are a lot of problems. For example, like I'm just using a new app chain or a new rollup I have not used before, and I want to do a transaction there, and I need the native ETH token to pay for it. That's just like that's just very complicated right now. You were to bridge something manually and then use it. Well, one like nice approach I would like to highlight, I just seen by the Coinbase wallet, for example. There you can actually access, it's also like a smart account-based wallet, there you can access your Coinbase ETH and use it as some kind of like, I love the term quantum ETH, everywhere without ever having done any transaction before on that specific chain.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I would mention paymasters too, connecting to what it says, because I think we are still one order of magnitude too much in the terms of cost of a single transaction, because in the end I see a user paying a few dollars a month for an application and transacting without worrying about how much gas costs, even if it's paid in an ERC20, and that will bring the user so close to what they're used now with their, I don't know, bank accounts or whatever it is.
So yeah, I have one that's not really talked about at all, which is if we're moving to this world where you have these like maybe infinite types of modules that extend the features of your account, then account configuration across chain is going to be really important. So maybe you have certain features that you're using to extend your account on Optimism, and then you go to Arbitrum, and you expect to still have those features. What are the services that are ensuring that the account that is deployed on Arbitrum also has those modules deployed with that account? So yeah, account config.
I will just say, let's build more apps. I think there's enough infrastructure, we can make it better, but apps is key.
Cool. So you heard it here first. Build more apps. I think we're all straight for time. Thank you so much for joining us, and for everyone on the live stream, thank you for tuning in. Yeah. Good work, guys.
Thank you.